It seems there are others involved, including Alan Dershowitz and Bill Clinton, both of whom were frequent flyers on the Lolita Express. If Epstein is hauled into court again, he could reveal damaging information about Bill. Number 3. The Clinton Global Initiative is shutting down. Some believe the initiative was operating as a pay-for-privilege scheme, and since Hillary was defeated, they are no longer receiving any money. There is significant evidence that the Global Initiative could have received donations totaling hundreds of millions of dollars every single year, with donations coming from chief executives, Saudi royalty, kings and queens, major corporations, and Hollywood actors. Actors like Brock Pierce, director of the Bitcoin Foundation, and a top member of the Clinton Global Initiative, working closely with Bill and Hillary. Brock Pierce was a child actor who starred in the Mighty Ducks movies. Later, he was implicated in a child sex trafficking ring that included 2 of his business partners, Chad Shackley and Mark Collins Rector, and Hollywood director Bryan Singer. Pierce has given major speeches and fundraised on behalf of the initiative. Another actor is Stephen Colbert, who was one of the first celebrities to publicly mock Pizzagate and defend Hillary. Not unsurprisingly, we know from WikiLeaks that Stephen Colbert was literally taking direct orders from the Clinton Global Initiative on what he could and could not say during segments of his show, The Colbert Report. His mockery of Pizzagate wasn't his own doing. It came from his bosses, Bill and Hillary. Back in 2013, Colbert actually toured with the Clinton Global Initiative and raised money for it. Who did the Clinton Global Initiative provide money to? We know that $2.5 million was given to a small nonprofit called Beyond Borders, located right here on the map of Washington, D.C. Beyond Borders claims that it is an organization that fights child trafficking in Haiti. We also know that the Clinton Global Initiative was involved financially with the Radcliffe Foundation, led by Canadian billionaire Frank Giestra. Bill Clinton took trips around the world with Giestra, including to Haiti. The Radcliffe Foundation funds several camps to help refugees, including this one called El Pita Home. On their website, El Pita has a photo of a camp with a picture of a blue triangle, which is one of a handful of symbols
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the other by the time I finish this song?
Okay, hello everyone. This video today about a Canadian imam who's thanking Trudeau for betraying Canada. Check this out.
ومنع عن الإسلام شبهة الإرهاب. أكرم الحديث. شكرا. هذا كان قبل. أما هذا الرجل الخلوق، هذا الرجل الخلوق نقول له نجاة العصر الحديث. شكرا لاستضافتك لمسلمين باسم هذه الدولة الكندية التي ترعاها كما رعاها النجاة في عصر القديم مسلمين مضطهدين معذبين. شكرا لك، شكرا لك يا نجاة في العصر الحديث. أيها الأحبة، إن
Okay, he's calling Trudeau the Najashi of the current era. This Imam, his name is Sha'ban Sharif. He's a scholar. He's from Al-Azhar. He's an Egyptian Imam. And he's the Imam in Edmonton. And in this video, he was complimenting Trudeau and Erdogan. Trudeau and Erdogan. And he's thanking Trudeau for, number one, hosting the Muslims, hosting the refugees, and also honor them, and also entering their mosques and greeting them for their holidays. And also he's thanking Trudeau because he removed the suspicion that terrorism is related to Islam. This is coming with motion M103. And that's exactly what the Imam was saying. He's thanking Trudeau because he removed the suspicion that terrorism is related to Islam.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong. Can you tell which thing is not like the other by the time I finish this song?
In Canada, we see diversity as a source of strength, not weakness. Our country is strong not in spite of our differences, but because of them. And make no mistake, we've had many failures, from the internment of Ukrainian, Japanese, and Italian Canadians during the World Wars, to our turning away of boats of Jewish and Punjabi refugees, to the shamefully continuing marginalization of Indigenous peoples. What matters is that we learn from our mistakes and recommit ourselves to doing better. To that end, in recent months, Canadians have opened their hearts and their arms to families fleeing the ongoing conflict in Syria. And from the moment they arrived, those 31,000 refugees were welcomed not as burdens, but as neighbors and friends, as new Canadians.
Justin Trudeau ignores Canada for the UN. I'm Brian Lilly with the Rebel.media. Well, Parliament has resumed, but our Prime Minister nowhere to be seen. No, he's not in question period. He's not answering questions from the opposition, those lowly elected officials here in Canada. No, he's at the UN. Now, he speaks there on Tuesday. Parliament resumed on Monday. He easily could have flown down to New York. It's an hour-and-a-half flight perhaps down there, and arrived just in time, as many world leaders do. But to Justin Trudeau, the United Nations is far more important than the simple Parliament here in Canada. Sure, he talks about how Canada is a great nation and the world looks up to us, and yet at every turn he wants to hand over sovereignty of Canadian power to the UN. He lusts after power at the UN body in the way that he doesn't here in Canada. He worships the organization despite all of its flaws. You can see it in the way that he acts, the fact that he's ignoring the opening of his own parliamentary session, the pushing of his own agenda to be down at the UN, to rub shoulders with some of the world's dignitaries and many of the dictators and tyrants that are given his equal standing at this body as he is, or Barack Obama is. But to Justin Trudeau, the UN is far and above superior to the simple parliamentary democracy we have here.
Oops. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announces Canadian open door policy. The Canadian open door Islamist policy, going against what Trump is doing in the United States. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the son of Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, who was totally bilingual, and I think he was, from what I remember, a black belt in karate. And his son, Justin Trudeau, takes after him. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau responded to President Trump's new executive order, which halted immigration from Muslim countries, by announcing the start of a German-style open-door policy, rolling out the red carpet welcoming all migrants to Canada. Justin Trudeau is a former drama teacher. He's also, as we said, the son of radical leftist Pierre Trudeau, and he signaled the start of Canada's open-door policy by tweeting, quote, "To those fleeing persecution, terror, and war, Canadians will welcome you, regardless of your faith. Diversity is our strength. Hashtag welcome to Canada." End quote.
Vet these people, which is to say, understand who is coming into the country and what their ideological commitments are, is the most important thing to consider. Since Douglas and I spoke, there have been many strange and silly declarations, both on the right and the left, relating to this crisis. And what's especially depressing is that the demagoguery has been coming from both sides. So we've had Donald Trump and Ben Carson and Ted Cruz say things like, I think Trump said there should be a registry for all Muslims and we should start closing mosques. We shouldn't let any of the Syrian refugees in. Cruz said we should let in only Christians. It's into the vacuum left by liberals that reasonable security concerns find this kind of expression, because the reasonable concerns are being denied at every turn. For instance, the president has said that no refugees have ever become terrorists, but that's simply untrue. There are Somali refugees living in Minnesota who have gone to fight and wage jihad for al-Shabaab. So it is just factually false, morally blind, and politically stupid to treat this as a non-issue. And every time the president opens his mouth on this topic without describing the problem accurately, avoiding at all costs the noun Islam, never uttering the words Islamic terrorism, or political Islam, or Islamism, or even jihadism, the feeling of being lied to just becomes more and more galling.
A response to that and to the opposition's motion is the Heritage Minister, Mélanie Joly. I'm very glad you were able to make it.
Very happy to be here.
Obviously, everyone's going to be shocked by these contemptible threats read out by Ms. Khalid. But my question to you in this context is whether that counts as Islamophobia. It's plainly anti-Muslim hate speech. It's uttering threats under the criminal code, if you like. Is it Islamophobia?
Well, Islamophobia is discrimination against Muslim people. And we know what is homophobia, we know what is misogyny, and we don't contest these definitions. So the thing is right now, the problem with the conservatives is they're fearful of identifying Islamophobia. And this, their own motion is a cynical attempt to find an answer to their own internal division. Mrs. Khalid came with this motion in December and decided in reaction to a petition that another member, Frank Bellis, did, condemning Islamophobia. 70,000 people signed the petition. Now, she came as a MP, decided to take that important issue up front and condemn Islamophobia and all systemic racism. And she is now putting forward her motion. We are supporting it. What's the impact? It's to study Islamophobia and systemic racism and to ask the Heritage Committee to find recommendations based on that study.
I take your
Well, this is kind of interesting. It seems there are some things the mainstream Marxist media does not want us to think about, doesn't want us to know. No, not all of them, but some of them. This is an article that I'm reading in the New York Daily News, nydailynews.com, and it says shooting at Quebec mosque leaves at least 6 people dead. You probably already heard about the story. Having a difficult time putting my words together this morning. But it says a pair of gunmen unleashed a hail of bullets inside a packed Quebec city mosque. Now, earlier, while I was previewing this article, I tried to find where this barbaric person, number one, was a Muslim, and number two, that he shouted Allahu Akbar when he burst in. Okay, here's some person named Mary Allah. But just doing that search, you can see up here in the upper right-hand corner, unless I'm misspelling it, it's just not there. So for some reason, you get the idea that the New York Daily News does not want us to know that this person was a Muslim and that the person shouted Allahu Akbar.
Well, it's the pampered, privileged Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, once again trying to tell us, from all his massive experience, I mean, this guy has so much credentials to be the Prime Minister of Canada. Let me just list his accomplishments that got him this job. He was a part-time high school substitute drama teacher and a ski instructor. And, oh, yeah, he's got nice hair. There's got to be something I'm forgetting. Oh, his name. Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, Trudeau. Yeah, that's it.
That we had a huge trust deficit, in part because the United States had, to be fair, we had helped to create the problem we're now fighting. How? Because when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, we had this brilliant idea that we were going to come to Pakistan and create a force of mujahideen, equip them with Stinger missiles and everything else to go after the Soviets inside Afghanistan. And we were successful. The Soviets left Afghanistan, and then we said, great, goodbye, leaving these trained people who were fanatical in Afghanistan and Pakistan, leaving them well armed, creating a mess, frankly, that at the time we didn't really recognize. We were just so happy to see the Soviet Union fall, and we thought, okay, fine, we're okay now. Everything's going to be so much better.
So, here you go. Already, the meeting in the White House over 2 years ago, everyone in the National Security Team recommended arming ISIS. And there you go. The whole National Security Team recommended arming ISIS. Need I say more?
Senator Solomon, I am the founder of Canadians Against Islamization. We're going to be protesting every Saturday, starting from the 21st of January at Yonge and Dundas and Square. I'm going to be protesting every Saturday. I want the real Canadians to join me. I want a real movement in Canada. We need to stop this. This is crazy. Trudeau betrayed the country. Trudeau betrayed Canada.
Absolutely.
They bringing all this Islamization. I run Islam from Saudi Arabia. I was raised in Saudi Arabia. This is danger. I saw the beheading in my eyes when I was young. I saw the beheading. They forced me to.
Looming over this week's UN General Assembly is a global diplomatic crisis. The fighting in Syria has continued after the Syrian military declared the U.S.-Russian brokered ceasefire over. And just moments later, an aid convoy of 31 trucks intended for tens of thousands of people was itself hit by airstrikes. At least 13 people were killed in the bombings, and just now the UN Humanitarian Aid Agency says that all convoys into Syria are suspended in the wake of the attack.
David Ignatius, give us the latest.
Joe, I want to just begin by saying that poor, tragic Syria, this is an unending nightmare for the Syrian people. A week ago, it looked like we had a U.S.-Russian brokered ceasefire. There was a reduction in violence. People allowed themselves the tiniest bit of optimism. Last Saturday night, the U.S. by accident struck a Syrian army position in the east of Syria, killing 60 Syrian soldiers. The Syrians were irate. The U.S. says it informed the Russians of the strike before it was conducted, but that doesn't really matter in terms of the reactions on the ground. And then Monday, we have this hideous bombing of an aid convoy. This is the first time an aid convoy has been hit in the 5 years of this war. 18 trucks were hit. I'm told there were over 20 barrel bombs that were dropped on these aid vehicles.
Good morning. Please have a seat. I am delighted this morning to introduce someone to yourself that does not need an introduction whatsoever. The importance of the visit of Mr. Kofi Annan is very clear to all of us, and we are honored of his presence. And
Kofi Annan is out. Did anybody see this coming?
Well, nobody was talking about it, though it's not surprising. It's interesting that it comes on this day when the UN Security Council is to discuss the fate of those UN unarmed observers who are pretty sidelined by the increasing violence there. Just one aspect of the failure of his mission. One diplomat from the West saying, you can't blame Kofi Annan for this, don't blame the man. It was Kofi Annan whose name was on that 6-point peace plan, but they really didn't get to point 1. And now Annan's off the masthead on that plan. The UN is going to look for a successor along with the Arab League. It will be intriguing to see if anyone wants to step into the breach to take that position up. Annan met with President Assad of Syria a couple of times. He implored the big powers that sit here at the UN Security Council to come together to send a message with consequences to the Assad regime in an effort to quell the violence. But nothing really worked.
You nations. He who scattered Israel will gather him and keep him as a shepherd does his flock.
And why do I believe the Jews are being encouraged to return to their land? Because God foretold that he would bring them all back. He said at the end of the age in Old Testament prophecies that they would not, that he would bring them back as, back to the land. And that once they were back to the land, they would never more be thrown out of it.
And I will bring back my exiled people Israel, and they shall build the waste cities and inhabit them. And they shall plant vineyards and drink their wine. They shall also make gardens and eat the fruit of them. And I will plant them upon their land, and they shall no more be pulled up out of their land, which I have given them, saith the Lord thy God.
So if you see Israel destroyed and annihilated, well, then we can throw away our Bibles. and find another religion to believe in. Because God said absolutely clearly he would not allow them to be defeated.
The nation Israel will not cease to exist as a nation forever, God says in Jeremiah 31, beginning at verse 35. And he says, if they cease, then there's no sun in the sky. There's no moon. There's no stars. The tides don't work. This universe is finished. That's how important Israel is.